Hi, welcome to the 10-Minute Parent. My name is Pastor Don Boldt, and today we're going to be talking about consistency. All right, consistency in a lot of things. Consistency in the way you reward, consistency in the way that you discipline, consistency in everything that you do. If your children are always having to guess, what's going to come because of this, that makes leading your children that much more difficult. If you've ever worked somewhere where you had more than one boss, and you sort of had the nice boss and the not so nice boss, or the strict one and the lenient one, you know how difficult and confusing that can be because sort of have to look and see, well, who's here today to decide how you should behave at work. Well, as a parent, obviously your children are with you an awful lot of hours, and so you will have a certain amount of inconsistency to you, just by virtue of the fact that sometimes you're tired and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're feeling up to the task and sometimes you're not. So they're going to have enough just from that, but to focus on this whole thing of being consistent. So how does this work? What you're trying to do is, okay, if I say something's wrong, all right, if I say, well, that's an example, you should always say please. Well, if I say you should always say please, once a week to a child, well, they're never going to get it, all right, obviously. If I only, bring them up to speed, once a day, again, they're still not going to get it. Consistency basically is a very hard job that requires a lot of work. And what you're doing is just saying, I'm going to really try for a period of time to try to catch every instance of what I'm trying to teach my child, all right, and I'm going to be very consistent and in the way that I apply this. You might even, we used to write things down and put them on the refrigerator just so we could pull that back in and say, well, look, remember we talked about this, and to keep that consistent pattern in our discipline with our children and just our leadership with them. And so with this, I tell people, I could stop all of the speeding on the 490 expressway going through town. And I could do it with $1 tickets. All right, but there's two things that I'd have to be sure of. If somebody's going 1 mile over the speed limit, we're going to stop and give them one of those $1 tickets. And you might say, well, that's not a very big disincentive. Well, yeah, it is if you make them sit by the side of the road for half an hour while you write the ticket for them. All right, so consistency sometimes works with just that you're going to be watchful, you're going to deal with it each time, and frankly, there has to be an inconvenience involved if I'm going to be consistent and disciplined. There has to be some inconvenience for them. Well, I'm sure you figured this out. That's inconvenient for you. That's inconvenient for me. But if we're not willing to be inconvenienced in order to be consistent, we'll never be consistent. All right, because it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of focus and time. And so when it comes to being consistent, understand that the other alternative, all right, is to be harsh. All right, because there's another way to shut down all of the speeding on the 490 expressway going through town here. And that's like, you only have to pull over one speeder a year, but you throw them away in prison for life. All right, well, that probably people would stop speeding for that too. But as a parent, I think you can see, you're not wanting to be this harsh person because you know it and I know it. If I'm at work and I've got a boss who's harsh, I avoid them, okay? You don't want your children to be avoiding you. You're trying to lead them. And so consistency becomes a much gentler way of being able to be powerful in your children's lives. We talked in another video about this whole thing of control and influence. Influence requires consistency, all right? Even control requires it, but influence, you have to be a person who's a consistent good example, consistent in prayer, consistent in so many things in order to be effective when your children grow up and are older. So I want to encourage you just to as you're working with your children, as you're deciding how to do things in your home, just remember this little concept of consistency, and we'll say God bless you for now, and we'll see you next time on the 10-Minute Parent.